Native Americans survived brutal winters with forgotten hacks that can beat modern methods. They faced blizzards so fierce, the cold could kill an unprepared person in a single night. Yet entire families stayed warm inside shelters made from just a thin layer of animal hide stretched over poles. But their real genius was tested when the unthinkable happened during a historic storm. Their firewood, their only source of heat, was running out. The fire was dying, the deadly cold was pushing in, and the standard survival tricks were failing them. They were on the brink. But instead of panicking, they turned to a different kind of knowledge. Small, almost invisible actions that seem to defy logic. When your main source of heat fails in the middle of a killer blizzard, what secret knowledge keeps your family from freezing to death? Subscribe. It helps these documentaries to reach more people who are interested in Native American survival skills as well, and maybe help them to fall asleep. And drop your city and local time in the comments. It's always fun to see our map light up. Our story begins not with a person, but with the land itself, and the time of year when the land holds its breath. This is the Great Northern Plains in the season known as the Moon of Frost in the Lodge, a time when the world is painted in the subtle shades of gray, white, and the deepest blue of a winter sky. The sun is a distant cousin, offering light but little warmth, its arc low and hurried across the horizon. The great winds that have spent the summer and autumn roaming free have now gathered their strength, pouring down from the frozen north, a vast and invisible river of cold that scours the high ground and erases all but the most resilient signs of life. The prairie grasses, once a sea of green and gold, are now brittle and pale, standing in frozen tussocks that catch the wind and whisper a dry, rustling song of survival. To be exposed in this season is to feel the land's indifference, to understand that warmth is a precious and fleeting gift. But even in this immense and sleeping world, there are places of sanctuary, quiet folds in the great frozen blanket of the earth where life can not only endure, but find comfort. We are going to one such place. Imagine a river valley, a gentle crease carved into the plains over countless centuries. The river, which in summer months ran loud and boisterous, now moves with a deep and quiet strength, its water the color of dark slate beneath a thin, growing skin of ice. The edges of the river are laced with a filigree of frost, each crystal a perfect and silent testament to the purity of the cold. Along the banks, a grove of ancient cottonwood trees stands guard. Their leaves are long gone, but their thick, furrowed trunks and tangled upper branches form a formidable shield, a living wall that catches the worst of the north wind, breaking its force and turning its roar into a low, steady hum. To the west of this grove, a series of low, rolling hills cup the valley, their gentle slopes positioned perfectly to catch the last of the day's sunlight, holding that faint warmth in their frozen soil long after the sun has vanished, releasing it slowly through the first hours of the longest nights. This small, sheltered place is a pocket of quiet, a promise of peace in a world defined by its harshness. It is into this valley that the family comes, moving not with haste, but with the slow, deliberate rhythm of people who are not merely passing through the land, but are a part of it. Their procession is a quiet one, the only sounds being the soft crunch of moccasins on the dry, powdery snow and the faint, rhythmic creak of wood on leather. The family is small, just a single lodge, representing 3 generations of knowledge and life. Leading the way on foot is the man, Chayton. He is in his prime, a hunter and a provider, his body lean and strong from a life lived in motion. His gaze is ever watchful, sweeping from the trail ahead to the trees on either side, reading the subtle language of a broken twig, a set of tracks in the snow, the flight of a lone bird against the gray sky. He walks with a purpose that is both calm and alert, a quiet confidence born of experience. Behind him, 2 shaggy ponies, their breath pluming like smoke in the frigid air, pull the travois. These simple A-shaped frames, made from long, sturdy poles, carry the family's entire world. One travois is laden with rolled parfleche cases, rawhide containers stiffly folded and painted with geometric designs, holding dried foods, tools, and personal belongings. The other, and more important of the two, carries the great, heavy bundle of the teepee cover, a mosaic of 15 expertly tanned buffalo hides, sewn together with sinew, folded with immense care into a dense protective package. The lodge poles themselves, long and slender, drag behind the ponies, their ends whispering against the snow, leaving 2 parallel lines that trace the family's path. Astride one of the ponies sits the elder, Kimi, the grandmother. She is the keeper of the seasons, her face a beautiful map of a long life, her dark eyes holding a deep and patient wisdom. She sits wrapped in a heavy buffalo robe, seeming to move as one with the horse beneath her, her posture relaxed but her senses entirely alive to the world around her. She is not merely looking at the landscape, she is listening to it. Beside her, walking with a hand often resting on the pony's flank, is her son's wife, Wingyan. She is the heart of the lodge, her presence one of quiet strength and competence. With her other hand, she holds the mitten of her youngest child, a little girl of 5 winters, who walks with the trusting steps of one who has never known anything but the safety of her family's care. Just ahead of them, a boy of 9 winters walks with a serious expression, trying to mimic his father's long, confident strides, his eyes darting about, practicing the art of seeing all that his father sees. They have traveled for 2 days to reach this specific valley, a place the grandmother remembered from her own childhood as a reliable winter camp. Now, as they enter the shelter of the Cottonwood Grove, the journey's end is not marked by hurried relief, but by a profound and deliberate pause. Chayton brings the small caravan to a halt in a clearing where the snow lies thin on the ground. The ponies lower their heads, grateful for the respite, but no one begins the work of unpacking. The tools remain tied. The great buffalo hide cover remains folded. The most important work of the day is about to begin, and it requires no tools but the senses, no effort but stillness, and no wisdom but that which has been carried down through countless generations. This is the act of choosing the ground. For a modern person, a campsite is often a matter of convenience, a flat spot, a nice view. But for this family, the precise spot where they will raise their lodge is a decision that will dictate their health, their comfort, and their very survival through the long, frozen months ahead. To choose correctly is to live in harmony with the winter. To choose poorly is to spend the season fighting a losing battle against the cold, the wind, and the snow. And so, they stand, a silent, motionless group in the heart of the great, quiet valley. The air is so still here, shielded from the wind, that they can hear the soft, feathered sound of a chickadee flitting through the branches overhead. Chayton turns his face to the north, then to the west, feeling the subtle currents of air that flow through the grove, currents that a less sensitive person would not even notice. He is searching for the dead spots, the places where the air is truly still, where the wind, even in a great storm, will be forced to go around. He scrapes the thin snow away with the side of his moccasin, studying the frozen earth beneath, looking for the telltale signs of good drainage, ensuring they will not be camped on a patch of ground that will turn to mud or ice in a brief thaw. He looks up at the cottonwoods, not just as a wall, but as a resource. His eyes trace the trunks, spotting the high, dead branches, the widowmakers that a storm could bring crashing down. Their lodge must stand clear of such dangers. Yet he also notes the abundance of dry, fallen wood scattered at the base of the trees, a gift of fuel waiting to be gathered. Kimi, the grandmother, dismounts from her pony with a slow, fluid grace. Her children and grandchildren watch her, waiting. She does not look for the obvious signs her son is assessing. Her focus is on something more subtle, something that speaks to the spirit of the place. She pulls her robe tighter and walks a slow, careful circle, her gaze directed downward. She is reading the story told by the plant life. Here, the grass is tough and wiry, a sign of wind-scoured, dry soil. Over there, a patch of brittle, brown reeds indicates a low spot where water gathers and freezes, a place that would leach warmth from their bodies all night long. She is searching for a balance. She walks toward the western edge of the grove, closer to the low hills that are now beginning to gather the pale, golden light of the afternoon. She knows that in the morning, this spot will be the last to leave the deep shadow of the eastern ridge, but in the afternoon, it will be the last to lose the sun, and that afternoon, warmth is the more precious of the two. It is a heat that will soak into the dark earth and into the tanned hides of their lodge, a stored blessing against the coming night. She stops and cocks her head, listening not just with her ears but with her whole body, feeling the vibration of the ground, the deep silence that lives beneath the whisper of the trees. The two children remain close to their mother, watching their grandmother with a quiet reverence. They have seen this ritual play out every winter of their lives. They are not taught with words, but with an example of patience. They are learning that the most important decisions are not made quickly. They are learning that the land offers everything you need, but you must be humble enough to ask, and quiet enough to hear the answer. The father, Chaitan, completes his own survey and comes to stand a respectful distance from his mother, his arms crossed, waiting for her judgment. He has made his own assessment and has his own preferred spot in mind, but her wisdom is deeper, her connection to these rhythms more ancient. Her eyes see things his have not yet learned to look for. Time seems to stretch, measured only by the slow, westward creep of the shadows. The sun touches the top of the western hills, and the light in the valley deepens to a soft, dusky rose. A coyote yips in the distance, its call sharp and clear in the cold air. Still, Kimmy stands, her eyes scanning a small patch of ground a few paces away. It looks no different from any other part of the clearing, but she has seen what she was looking for. There, in a slight depression, almost a saucer in the earth, the dormant grasses are not broken and scattered by the wind. They are bent, all leaning in the same direction, pressed down by a season of snow but still whole, protected. The light layer of snow that covers them is not a hard, wind-crusted sheet, but a fine, crystalline powder, as undisturbed as if it had been gently sifted from the sky. This is the place. It is a pocket within a pocket, a spot of ultimate stillness. It is on ground high enough to be dry, yet low enough to be sheltered. It is far enough from the river to be safe from any sudden rise in the ice, yet close enough for easy access to water. It is shielded by the great cottonwoods from the north, and it is open to the last warming rays of the west. It is perfect. She does not call out. She does not point with her finger, a gesture considered rude, like an accusation. Instead, she purses her lips slightly and lifts her chin, a quiet, subtle gesture in the direction of the spot. Chaitan's eyes follow hers, and he sees it instantly. He sees the way the grasses lie, the way the snow is settled, and he understands. He gives a short, sharp nod of agreement. There is nothing to discuss. The land has spoken, and his mother has translated its language. A silent understanding passes through the family. Wingyan gently guides the children toward the chosen spot, their small forms casting long shadows in the fading light. Chaitan moves to the ponies and begins to untie the knots holding the travois poles. The period of quiet observation is over. The time for work has begun. They have not claimed this ground. They have been welcomed by it. And upon this small, sacred piece of the earth, they will build their home, a circle of warmth and life against the long, deep cold of the winter. As the last of the sun's warmth retreats from the valley, the sky above transforms. The pale rose and gold of sunset deepen into an immense silent dome of indigo, then to a pure, cold blackness pricked by the diamond-hard light of 1,000,000 stars. In this sharp, clear air, without the haze of modern life, the great river of the Milky Way is a luminous cloud, a trail of spirits across the heavens. The world grows profoundly quiet. The wind in the high branches of the cottonwoods has fallen to a near inaudible whisper. It is into this deep and sacred silence that the work begins, and it unfolds not with the clamor of construction, but with the quiet rhythm of a ceremony, a physical prayer. The pace is slow, deliberate, meditative, Every action has been performed in this exact way for generations, and the muscle memory of the people is as much a part of the process as the poles and the hides. Chayton moves to the pile of lodge poles that have been carefully laid upon the ground. There are 16 of them in total, each one a slender lodgepole pine, harvested in the high country during the summer, peeled of its bark, and seasoned until it is both incredibly strong and remarkably light. They are smooth to the touch, worn to a soft patina from years of use, each pole carrying the faint, pleasant scent of pine resin and wood smoke. He does not simply grab the first 3 he comes to. He runs his hands along them, feeling for their balance, their straightness. The teepee is a delicate machine, a thing of balance and tension, and its strength begins with the foundation. He selects 3 poles that are almost identical in length and heft. These 3 will be the heart of the structure, the tripod upon which everything else will depend. He lays these 3 poles on the frozen ground, their thicker base ends together, their slender tips pointing away like the spokes of a great wheel. He positions them carefully, one pointing to where the back of the lodge will be, the other 2 splayed out to form the sides of the eventual doorway. Now comes the lashing, the knot that will hold their home together against the fiercest blizzard. From a pouch at his side, he takes a long, supple rope of braided rawhide, its surface dark and glossy with use. He begins to wrap it around the 3 poles, about a foot down from their slender tips. He does not wrap it tightly at first, but with a certain calculated slack. The technique is precise, a complex series of loops and turns that has been passed from father to son for a time beyond memory. It is a knot designed not simply to bind, but to create a flexible joint, a pivot point that can absorb the shuddering force of a gale rather than breaking before it. As he works, his hands moving with an unhurried, expert grace, one could almost imagine the hands of his father and his father's father performing this same essential task in this same way. The rawhide whispers as it passes over the smooth wood. He makes 4 wraps around all 3 poles, then he weaves the rope between each of them, a figure-8 motion that locks the main wrapping in place. He finishes by tucking the end of the rope under the last wrap and pulling it taut. The knot is complete. It is not a rigid, crushing knot, but a strong and clever one, a small piece of ancestral engineering that understands the nature of wind and wood. Now comes the moment of raising. Chayton moves to the center of the crossed poles. Wing-Yen comes to stand at the base of the 2 front poles, her moccasined feet placed firmly against them to keep them from sliding. The boy watches his father, his eyes wide, absorbing the lesson. Chayton crouches, gathering his strength. He places his hands beneath the crossing point, his shoulder braced against the central pole. He is not just lifting wood, he is lifting the frame of his family's world. With a single, fluid motion born of quiet power, he rises, walking his hands up the pole, pushing the tripod into the air. The poles groan softly, a sound of wood fibers coming under tension. Their tips scrape against each other as they pivot on the rawhide lashing, and for a moment, the structure is a clumsy, awkward thing of angles. But as he continues to push, walking forward, the bases of the poles scraping across the frozen earth, a transformation occurs. The tripod rises, reaching a point of perfect balance, and settles into its final, powerful shape, a 3-sided pyramid of immense stability. It stands on its own now, a skeletal promise against the star-dusted sky. Wing-Yen adjusts the bases, spreading them to form a perfect circle on the ground, a circle about 15 feet in diameter. The foundation of their home is set. The rest of the work flows from this point with a calm and steady cadence. Chayton begins to lift the remaining 13 poles, one by one, and lay them into the V-shaped crotch created by the tripod lashing. Each pole is placed with care, its base set at its proper place on the circumference of the circle. He adds them in a specific order, creating a balanced and symmetrical cone of wood. As the poles are added, the structure gains density and strength, becoming a beautiful, bristling framework, a perfect geometric shape designed by centuries of trial and error. This conical shape is no accident. It is a masterpiece of natural physics, An upright wall would catch the wind like a sail, straining and eventually breaking. But this graceful, sloping cone presents no flat surface to the storm. The wind, no matter how ferocious, is deflected. It flows up and around the structure, its power nullified by the simple, profound wisdom of the design. The snows of a heavy blizzard, which would pile up on a flat roof and cause it to collapse, will simply slide down the steep pitch of the tipi's sides, accumulating around its base as a natural, insulating blanket. The structure is not fighting the winter, it is cooperating with it. Chayton leaves one final, special pole lying on the ground. This one is the lifting pole, and its moment will come soon. He also leaves a small gap in the cone of poles on the eastern side, the place where the doorway will be. This placement is ancient and deliberate. The prevailing winds, the great, cold winds of winter, come from the north and the west. By placing the door to the east, it is always in the lee of the structure, sheltered from the harshest blasts. And in the morning, the very first rays of the rising sun will shine through the opening, a daily greeting of light and hope, a reminder of the promise of a new day. With the skeleton of the lodge in place, the moment has come to give it a skin. Wingyan and her mother, Kimi, move to the large, heavy bundle that has been carefully placed near the framework. This is the teepee cover, the true heart of the family's wealth and comfort. It is Wingyan's pride, for the cover belongs to the woman of the lodge. It is her responsibility to maintain it, and her skill is evident in its quality. This is no single piece of hide. It is a carefully engineered mosaic of 15 prime buffalo cow skins, harvested in the late autumn when their coats were at their thickest. The hides were tanned by the women over many weeks, a laborious process of scraping, soaking in a solution of brains and liver to soften them, and then stretching and smoking them over a fire, a process that makes the leather soft, pliable, and water-resistant. The smoking gives the hides their beautiful, pale, creamy color, and their distinctive, comforting scent of wood smoke. The 15 hides have been cut into a precise semicircle and sewn together with thread made from the long, strong sinew pulled from the spine of the buffalo. The stitch she has used is a tight, running stitch made with a sharp bone awl, and as the sinew dries, it shrinks, pulling the edges of the seam so tightly together that they are virtually waterproof. Each seam is a testament to a successful hunt, a story of provision and gratitude. When laid flat, the cover would form a half circle more than 30 feet across. Now, it is folded with a practiced and specific technique into a long, heavy rectangle. Together, Wingyan and Chayton begin to unfurl the great cover. The sound is a low, heavy rasp, the sound of smoked hide rubbing against itself. It is the sound of home. They handle it with a reverence born of understanding. This is not just a tent. It is the breathable shield that will stand between their children and the killing cold. The two children, who have been watching in quiet awe, are now called to help. They take hold of the corners, their small hands struggling with the weight, and help their parents pull the great expanse of hide flat on the snow-covered ground behind the lodge frame. In the starlight, it looks like a pale, fallen moon. Now Chayton retrieves the lifting pole. He lays it across the center of the spread-out cover, and Wingyan securely ties the hide to its tip, using 2 leather flaps sewn there for this exact purpose. The moment of enclosure has arrived. Chayton takes the base of the lifting pole, and with Wingyan guiding the heavy folds of the hide, he raises it and places it in the last remaining gap in the cone of poles. He then takes one side of the cover, and Wingyan takes the other. They begin to walk in opposite directions around the frame, pulling the 2 halves of the great semicircle of hide with them. The hide slides over the smooth poles, a soft whooshing sound in the night air. It is a slow, careful dance. They meet at the front, at the east-facing doorway. The skeleton of poles is now completely wrapped in its warm, pale skin. The structure is no longer a frame. It has become a shelter. A series of small, precisely spaced holes have been punched down the 2 front edges of the cover where they overlap. Chayton reaches into a leather pouch and pulls out a handful of slender, sharpened wooden pins, each about 8 inches long. Starting from the top, just above the doorway, he begins to pin the 2 sides of the cover together. like lacing up a great leather coat. His movements are efficient and sure. The final step is to secure the base. All around the bottom edge of the cover, small loops of leather are sewn into the hide. Using wooden stakes carved from cottonwood, Chaitin and Wingyan move around the circumference of the new lodge, pulling the cover taut and hammering the stakes into the hard, frozen ground. Each dull thud of stone against wood is a sound of finality, of security. The teepee is now a single, solid unit, anchored to the earth, its smooth, steep sides aimed at the stars. It stands complete, a pale and silent cone in the deep winter darkness, a monument to purpose, knowledge, and care. The air outside is thin and sharp with a cold that bites at any exposed skin, but the family does not feel it. They are warmed by the gentle rhythm of their work and by the profound satisfaction of what they have created. They have not built a mere structure. They have raised a breathable shield, a place of sanctuary, a circle of warmth on the frozen land. The work of the body is done for the night, and soon, the work of the spirit, of turning this shelter into a home, will begin. The family steps through the eastern-facing doorway, one by one, into the great, dark cone of their new home. Inside, the world changes. The immense, star-filled emptiness of the sky is replaced by an encompassing sense of shelter. It is a different kind of darkness in here, a darkness that feels close and protective. High above, at the apex of the 16 poles, a small circle of sky is visible, a porthole to the cosmos where the brightest stars glitter with an intense, cold fire. The air is still and frigid, holding the deep chill of the frozen earth, but it is a dead, calm cold, utterly free from the biting edge of the wind. A profound silence reigns, the silence of a sanctuary. The ground has been prepared, with Wingyan and the children having spent the last hour meticulously clearing every stone and twig from the interior circle, then laying down a carpet of dried grasses they brought with them, its faint, sweet scent, a memory of summer. This is the first layer of insulation, a simple but critical barrier against the cold that will forever try to seep up from the ground. Now, in the near-total darkness, they begin the quiet and familiar work of turning this beautiful, empty structure into a living space. Their movements are sure and economical, guided by a lifetime of practice, requiring little light and even less speech. Kimi, the grandmother, directs the placement of their few belongings. The space within a teepee is not random. It is organized, a microcosm of the world itself. The place of honor, the space at the back, directly opposite the door, is reserved for the family's sacred bundle and for the head of the household. The right side of the lodge, as one enters, is the woman's side, the area where food is prepared and sewing is done. The left side is the man's domain, where weapons and hunting tools are kept in a state of constant readiness. Wingyan begins to unroll the heavy sleeping robes, great, thick buffalo hides tanned with the hair on, the woolly fur a deep, soft mattress of unparalleled warmth. She lays them out around the perimeter of the lodge, hair side up, their heads pointing toward the center. On top of these, she places their backrests, clever tripod frames of smooth willow rods laced together with sinew, which will allow them to sit comfortably upright, leaning back as if in a chair. Everything has its place. The parfleche containers of dried meat, berries, and roots are stacked neatly against the wall on the woman's side. A bladder filled with water, carefully protected from freezing on the journey, is placed near the center. The children, knowing their roles without being told, place the family's few bowls, carved from the burls of an ash tree, beside the food stores. The boy helps his father bring in the carefully selected firewood that has been gathered and stacked just outside the door, sorting it into 3 piles: the small, dry twigs for kindling, the faster-burning willow branches for quick heat and cooking, and the dense, gnarled roots of cottonwood, which will burn slow and hot, creating a bed of coals that will last through the long night. These are not chores. They are the rhythmic actions of life, the steady, repeated motions that build a foundation of order and security. As the family works, 2 other members of their party, who have been patiently waiting outside, are finally permitted to enter. They are the dogs, large and shaggy, their blood a mix of wolf and the ancient canine breeds of the plains. They are not pets in the modern sense, pampered and playful. They are working partners, loyal sentinels, and hunting companions whose senses are an extension of the family's own. They enter the lodge not with a bound, but with a low, respectful crawl, their bellies to the ground, a gesture of deference to the human space. Once inside, they find their designated spots near the door, curling into tight, furry balls, immediately becoming a living draft block and an early warning system. In the center of the lodge, Chayton has been preparing the hearth. He has scraped away the grass insulation to create a shallow, circular pit in the bare earth. Now, using a sharp piece of stone, he carefully extends one side of the circle into a short, straight trench, creating a shape much like a keyhole. This, too, is an ancient design, simple and brilliant. The large, circular part of the pit is for the main fire, the heart of warmth and light. The smaller, rectangular extension is where hot coals will be raked for cooking, allowing food to be prepared without having to work directly over the open flames. He lays the foundation for a fire with the care of an artist, building a small, airy structure of the driest tinder, surrounding it with a latticework of twigs. He takes out his fire-making kit, a small buckskin pouch containing a piece of flint, a shard of iron pyrite, and a clutch of dried fungus. He strikes the stones together, a sharp, clicking sound in the quiet lodge. A tiny spark leaps, lands on the fungus, and glows a faint, angry red. He gently places the smoldering tinder into his nest of grass and blows, his breath a long, slow, steady stream. The ember brightens, a wisp of smoke appears, and then, with a soft, satisfying whoosh, a small, bright flame blossoms in the center of their home. The fire is a living thing. It breathes, it dances, it transforms the space. The darkness retreats to the edges of the lodge, and the interior is filled with a warm, flickering golden light. The pale, creamy hides of the teepee walls glow like parchment lanterns. The faces of the family are illuminated, their expressions calm and content. The small flame grows as Chayton adds more twigs, its crackle and pop, the first sounds to disturb the deep silence. The warmth begins to push back against the profound chill of the evening, a small but determined victory. It is in this moment of newfound comfort, of a home truly established, that the first subtle sign arrives. It is nothing dramatic, nothing that an outsider would even notice. The older of the two dogs, the one with a scar above his left eye, lifts his head. He does not whine or bark. He simply gets to his feet, a fluid and silent motion, and stands perfectly still, his body rigid, his nose pointing directly to the north, toward the tightly sealed hide of the teepee wall. His ears, usually relaxed, are pricked forward, twitching slightly, listening for a sound that is beyond the range of human hearing. The younger dog, sensing the change in his companion, rises as well, mirroring the older dog's stance. Chayton sees the movement and pauses in his tending of the fire. He watches the dogs for a moment. Perhaps a wolf pack is moving in the high country, miles away. Perhaps a lone buffalo is wandering through the distant hills. He dismisses it for the moment and returns to his work. But then comes the second sign. Kimmy, the grandmother, is sitting on a buffalo robe, her hands busy repairing a small tear in one of the children's mittens with a bone awl and a strand of sinew. She suddenly stops. Her hands, gnarled but still nimble, fall silent in her lap. Her head tilts, just as the dog's ears had, listening, but she is not listening for a sound. She is listening to the silence, and she notices its quality has changed. The quiet, comfortable sounds of the small creatures of the valley night, the rustle of a mouse in the dry grass, the distant hoot of an owl, have ceased. The entire world outside the thin hide walls seems to be holding its breath. It is an unnatural stillness, a dead quiet that speaks not of peace, but of anticipation. Her eyes, deep and knowing, narrow slightly. She has felt this kind of silence before. The third sign confirms the others. Wingyan is preparing to make a simple broth, and she watches the smoke from the small but now steady fire. In the calm air of the sheltered valley, with the lodge correctly pitched, the smoke should rise in a clean, straight column, drawn directly up and out through the smoke hole 15 feet above. But it is not. The smoke rises a few feet, then seems to hit an invisible ceiling. It grows lazy, coiling back on itself, some of it spilling sideways and beginning to drift in a thin, hazy layer through the upper part of the lodge. The air grows thick with the sharp, acrid smell of burning wood, a smell that should have been carried away into the night sky. This behavior of the smoke is an unmistakable sign to a people who live by such things. It means the atmospheric pressure is dropping rapidly. A heavy, dense lid of air is pressing down upon the land, a sure harbinger of a massive weather system moving in. Wingyan looks up from the fire, a question in her eyes. She glances at the dogs, still rigid and staring north. Then she looks at her husband's mother. Kimi meets her gaze and gives a single, almost imperceptible nod. It is all the confirmation needed. The quiet whispers of the natural world have delivered their verdict. A storm is coming. Not just a night of snow, but a true plains blizzard. A white darkness that can rage for days, burying the world in a shroud of white. Driven by winds so powerful and cold they can freeze the life out of any creature caught exposed. Chaitan sees the silent exchange between the women. He looks at the lazy smoke, at the unnervingly focused dogs, and he stands. Without a word, he pushes aside the hide flap of the doorway and steps outside. The air that greets him is not what one would expect before a storm. There is no wind. The cold is deep, but it is a still, placid cold. But it feels different now. It feels heavy, suffocating. The air itself seems to have gained weight, pressing down on him. He looks up at the sky. The stars, which had been so sharp and clear, now seem to have a faint, blurry halo around them, a subtle diffusion of light caused by ice crystals forming in the highest, coldest reaches of the atmosphere. And though he cannot hear it, he can feel it, a deep, sub-audible vibration in the world, a sense of immense and terrifying power gathering itself just over the northern horizon. The whisper on the wind has become a silent shout. He steps back inside the lodge, pulling the door flap securely shut. The flickering firelight catches the new expression on his face. The easy contentment is gone. In its place is a look of profound and absolute focus. He does not look frightened. He looks like a captain who has just been told his ship is sailing into a hurricane. His wife, his children, his mother, their lives now depend entirely on his knowledge, their collective wisdom, and the strength of the home they have just built. The feeling in the camp shifts instantly and completely. The comfortable domestic atmosphere vanishes, replaced by a quiet, purposeful urgency. Wingyan immediately puts away the makings for the broth. Food can wait. Kimi sets aside her mending. Comfort can wait. Every task, every thought, every movement from this moment on is dedicated to a single purpose, reinforcing the circle of warmth against the coming cold. The children, sensitive to the change in the adults, fall silent and draw closer to their mother, their faces sober, watching. They have been born into this world. They know this silent alarm. It is a feeling that lives in their blood. Chaitan turns not to the fire, but to the stack of untanned rawhide that he brought for repairs. Wingyan moves to the pile of extra robes. Kimi begins to inspect the bottom edge of the tipi cover, checking for any gaps where the wind might find a toothhold. The first flakes of the great storm have not yet begun to fall, but in the minds and in the determined actions of the family, the blizzard has already arrived. Act 1 of their winter story has closed not in fear, but in a quiet, collective resolve, a gathering of strength to face the full and unforgiving power of the wild. With the unseen storm now a certainty, the family's focus turns inward, transforming their newly raised shelter into a fortress of warmth. Their first and most critical bastion against the coming cold is the fire. It is more than just a source of heat. It is the living, breathing heart of the lodge, and its proper management is an art form, a science passed down through 1,000 blizzards. Chayton kneels before the keyhole-shaped fire pit, his actions deliberate and precise. The small flame he built earlier has served its purpose. Now, he begins to construct a fire designed not for a calm evening, but for a prolonged siege. The challenge in a tipi is not just creating heat, but managing air. A fire consumes oxygen and produces smoke. In a sealed modern house, this would be a death sentence. But the teepee is a dynamic system designed to breathe, and the fire is its engine. Chayton knows that a roaring blaze, while impressive, is a fool's fire. It consumes fuel at an astonishing rate and can create dangerous updrafts that actually pull more cold air into the lodge. His goal is to create a fire that is efficient, one that produces the maximum amount of radiant heat from the minimum amount of wood. He carefully lays a bed of the slow-burning cottonwood roots in the circular pit, creating a solid, stable foundation. On top of this, he places several larger pieces of willow, arranged in a V shape with the point facing the door. This isn't random. It's a technique to draw air from the entrance, feeding the base of the fire and encouraging a clean, efficient burn. While her son prepares the fire, Kimi directs her attention to a bundle of thin, tanned deer and antelope hides that have been kept in reserve. This is the ozan, or the teepee liner, and it is a piece of technology as crucial as the outer cover itself. It is, in essence, an inner wall. Wing-Yan and the children help her, unrolling the sections of hide. They move around the inside perimeter of the lodge, tying the top edge of the liner to the lodge poles with a series of leather thongs, about 6 feet up from the ground. The liner doesn't go all the way to the top of the tipi. It creates a sealed inner room within the larger structure. Its bottom edge is left to hang free, just brushing the grassy floor. The genius of the ozan is in the way it manages airflow. Cold, dense air is heavy. It seeps under the edge of the main tipi cover and sinks to the floor. Without the liner, this cold air would simply pool around the family, chilling them to the bone, creating a constant, miserable draft. But the liner stops it. The cold air is trapped in the space between the outer cover and the inner liner. As the fire burns, it heats the air inside the living space. This warm air, being lighter, rises. As it rises, it creates a gentle convection current. This current pulls the trapped cold air from behind the liner up toward the smoke hole. The cold air flows up and over the top of the liner, feeding the fire with fresh oxygen from above, and then getting drawn out the top with the smoke. It is a brilliant, self-regulating ventilation system. It eliminates drafts from the floor, keeps the living space remarkably warmer, and ensures the fire has a constant, steady supply of oxygen to burn cleanly, all without any moving parts. It turns the entire teepee from a simple cone into a double-walled engine of warmth. With the liner in place, a palpable change occurs within the lodge. The space feels more intimate, more secure. The flickering firelight now reflects off the smooth, pale surface of the inner wall, making the interior seem brighter and warmer. The thin layer of air trapped between the walls acts as a surprisingly effective layer of insulation, and the family can already feel the temperature in the lower part of the lodge begin to rise, stabilizing into a comfortable warmth. But the fire's gifts are not limited to the air. As the cottonwood roots in the base of the fire begin to catch, they don't burst into flame. They begin to glow, a deep, pulsating orange-red, creating an intense bed of coals. This is the true source of lasting heat. These coals produce very little smoke but radiate a steady, penetrating warmth that soaks into everything in the lodge, the earth of the floor, the heavy buffalo robes, and most importantly, the people themselves. Chayton now introduces another element to the system. From a sturdy rawhide bag, he carefully removes a dozen smooth, gray, fist-sized river stones. They have been selected over years for their density and their lack of cracks or fissures that could cause them to shatter in the heat. He places these stones directly into the glowing bed of coals. There, they will slowly, patiently absorb the fire's energy, becoming reservoirs of heat that can be deployed where they are needed most. This is a form of thermal storage, a way of capturing the fire's power and making it portable. The family settles into a new routine, one of quiet preparedness. While the fire builds its heart of coals and the stones drink in the heat, each member attends to their tasks. Chaitan leaves the lodge for a final time, taking with him a heavy buffalo bladder. He returns minutes later, the bladder full of the fine, powdery snow from the sheltered clearing. He places it near the fire, but not too near, allowing the ambient warmth to begin the slow process of melting it into drinking water. To simply place a vessel of snow directly on the fire would risk scorching the container and creating a foul taste. Patience is the key. Winyan, meanwhile, checks the family's food supplies. She knows that in a blizzard, the body becomes a furnace, and that furnace requires fuel. Calories are not a matter of diet, they are a matter of survival. She opens a parfleche case and takes out a block of pemmican. This is the ultimate winter survival food, another masterpiece of ancestral ingenuity. It is made from lean buffalo meat, dried until it is brittle, then pounded into a fine powder using stone hammers. This meat powder is then mixed with an equal amount of hot, rendered buffalo fat. Finally, a handful of dried choke cherries or service berries are stirred in for flavor and vitamins. The mixture is then packed tightly into rawhide pouches, where it cools and hardens into a dense, energy-rich block that will keep for years without spoiling. It is a perfect food, a concentrated burst of protein and fat that the body can quickly convert into heat. She uses a flint knife to shave off small pieces, giving one to each of the children and to her mother. It is not a meal, but a preemptive strike against the cold, stoking their internal fires before the true chill arrives. Kimmy, her own tasks complete, has settled onto her sleeping robe, her back supported by a willow rest. She watches her family, her presence a silent, calming anchor in the center of the purposeful activity. Her gaze falls upon the two children. They are sitting together, their small hands held out toward the growing warmth of the fire, their faces glowing in the soft light. The little girl is leaning against her older brother, her eyes heavy with sleep despite the quiet tension in the air. The boy, feeling his father's seriousness, is trying to stay awake, his expression solemn. Kimi knows that the children and the elderly are the most vulnerable to the deep, penetrating cold of a long storm. Their bodies cannot generate heat as efficiently as a healthy adult in their prime. She reaches out and pulls a heavy, soft rabbit fur robe closer to her. Soon, she will check on the heated stones. When they are hot enough to radiate warmth but not so hot as to burn, she will carefully wrap them in scraps of soft hide and tuck them into the foot of the children's sleeping robes and her own. These warming stones will continue to release a slow, steady, gentle heat for hours, a small personal sun to guard them through the coldest part of the night. It is a small act, but in the calculus of survival, it is the accumulation of these small, wise acts that makes the difference between life and death. The heart of the lodge is now secure. The fire is burning efficiently. The liner is managing the airflow. The stones are gathering warmth, and the family is fueled and ready. They are a self-contained ecosystem of warmth and life, a tiny, resilient island, floating in a growing sea of cold. Outside, the world is silent, waiting. Inside, the fire crackles softly, a steady, rhythmic heartbeat in the center of their home, with the interior of the lodge secured and the systems of warmth fully engaged. Chaitan's attention shifts to the exterior, to the crucial interface between their small circle of life and the immense, gathering power of the storm. The tipi is not a static, sealed box like a modern house. It is a living machine, a sensitive instrument that must be constantly tuned to the changing conditions outside. Its primary controls, the components that allow it to adapt and breathe, are the two great smoke flaps at the very top of the lodge. These are not mere holes, but a sophisticated adjustable venting system that functions as the lungs of the tipi. From the outside, the smoke flaps are two triangular extensions of the main tipi cover, located at the apex where the poles cross. Each flap has a long, slender pole, a control pole, sewn into a pocket along its outer edge. These two poles, which are separate from the main structural poles of the lodge, stand tall against the sky, their bases resting on the ground, their tips holding the smoke flaps open. By moving the bases of these control poles around the circumference of the teepee, a person can precisely adjust the angle, shape, and size of the opening at the top, responding with minute accuracy to the strength and direction of the wind. This is not a task learned from a book. It is a skill honed by feel, by listening, and by watching the subtle behavior of the smoke. It is a continuous conversation with the weather. Chaitin steps out of the lodge into the profound and heavy stillness of the pre-storm night. He leaves the door flap slightly ajar so that Wingyan, watching the smoke from inside, can call out instructions. The task now is to set the flaps for the initial phase of the storm. He knows the blizzard will come from the north. Therefore, he must create an opening that is sheltered from that direction, one that will create a perfect aerodynamic draw, pulling the smoke out cleanly without allowing the wind to blow back down into the lodge. He walks to the back of the tipi, to the south side, and takes hold of the two smooth control poles. They are cool and solid in his hands. He looks up, his eyes tracing the faint outline of the teepee against the star-dusted sky, visualizing the flow of air. A little more to the west, Wingyan's voice calls out, her tone calm and clear from within the lodge. She is watching the column of smoke, her eyes narrowed in concentration. It is still behaving sluggishly, a sign of the immense pressure bearing down. Chaitin grunts in acknowledgement and moves the base of the western pole a few feet to his left. He plants its base firmly in the frozen ground. This action pulls the western smoke flap further across the opening, partially shielding it, and the other one, bring it closer, she instructs. He moves the eastern pole's base inward, toward the wall of the tipi. This second adjustment widens the opening on the leeward side, the side away from the coming wind. He has now created a kind of airfoil at the top of the lodge. The wind, when it arrives, will flow over the curved top of the tipi and be forced to speed up as it passes over the opening he has created. This increase in speed creates a small area of low pressure, the same principle that gives an airplane wing its lift. This low-pressure zone acts like a gentle vacuum, actively and efficiently pulling the smoke up and out of the lodge, regardless of the turmoil in the surrounding air. There, Wingyan's voice confirms from inside. It is straight now. Chaitin looks up and can just make out the thin, dark ribbon of smoke now rising in a clean line from the top of the lodge, disappearing into the darkness. He has tuned the instrument perfectly for the conditions that are, but he knows this is only the beginning. Throughout the storm, he or his wife will have to come out repeatedly, perhaps every hour, to make tiny adjustments. As the wind shifts, even by a few degrees, the position of the flaps will need to be changed. If a sudden, powerful gust comes, they may need to be closed almost completely for a moment to prevent a downdraft of smoke and freezing air from blasting into the lodge. The teepee is not a passive shelter. It is an active one, and it demands constant vigilance. To neglect the flaps is to invite disaster, a lodge filled with blinding, choking smoke, or worse, a wind powerful enough to catch the inside of the flaps and rip the entire structure from its foundations. The two control poles are the reins, and the storm is the wild horse he must guide. His task complete for now, Chaitin takes a moment to make a final survey of their small camp. The two ponies are huddled on the most sheltered side of the cottonwood grove, their thick winter coats fluffed up, their backs turned to the north. They are hardy animals, accustomed to the plains winters, and they will endure. He checks the wood pile, ensuring the driest pieces are covered with a spare piece of rawhide to protect them from the coming snow. He scans the perimeter of the camp one last time, his senses on high alert. The world is unnervingly silent. The air has grown so still and heavy that he can hear the faint, rhythmic sound of his own heart beating. It is the deep, profound quiet that always precedes nature's greatest furies. He knows this is the last moment of peace he will have for some time. He takes a deep breath of the cold, clean, heavy air and slips back into the warmth of the lodge. Inside, the atmosphere is one of serene preparedness. The fire glows, the children are dozing under a shared robe, and the scent of wood smoke and warm hides fills the air. He has done all he can to prepare the outer shell of their world. He and Wingyan exchange a look of silent understanding. The lodge is ready. The family is ready. Now, they have only to wait for the storm to break upon them, and as they wait, they listen. They listen to the fire, to the breathing of their children, and to the immense, patient, and gathering silence of the world outside, knowing that when that silence is finally broken, it will be with a voice of unimaginable power. The teepee, this elegant breathing machine, will be their only shield. As the family waits in the warm, fire-lit interior of the lodge, the lesson shifts from the grand architecture of the teepee to a more intimate scale. The shelter that each person carries with them, the one they wear upon their own body. In the deep cold of a plains winter, even the most perfect lodge is only a reprieve. Every journey outside, whether to gather wood, check on the horses, or hunt, is a journey into a world where a mistake in clothing can have swift and final consequences. Their protection is not a single garment, but a sophisticated, multi-layered system, each piece a product of careful observation and generations of refinement. It is a system built on a profound understanding of how the body creates and loses heat, and how to manage the silent, ever-present enemy of all cold weather survival, moisture. The children, now stirring from their doze, provide the first lesson. Kimmy, the grandmother, notices the little girl is starting to look too warm, her cheeks flushed from sitting close to the fire. With a gentle touch, she helps the girl remove her outermost layer, a small but heavy robe made from the hide of a yearling buffalo calf. Kimmy knows that even a small amount of sweat, imperceptible in a warm room, can become a deadly threat the moment one steps outside. Sweat dampens the inner layers of clothing, and dampness robs the body of heat 25 times faster than cold air alone. It is a chillingly efficient thief of warmth. To stay warm, one must first stay dry, not just from the snow outside, but from the moisture a body produces from within. The foundation of their clothing system is the layer closest to the skin. This is not the coarse wool or rough canvas of later settlers, but something far softer and more intelligent. For this first layer, they use the hides of smaller animals, tanned to an incredible, chamois-like softness. The skins of young fawn, rabbit, or antelope, turned with their fur side facing inward, create a garment that is not only exquisitely soft against the skin but also remarkably functional. The fine, dense fur traps a thin, stable layer of air directly against the body. This air is quickly warmed by the body's own heat and becomes a primary layer of insulation. It is a personal atmosphere, a microclimate of warmth that moves with the wearer. Furthermore, the natural oils in the fur and the tanned hide itself have a surprising ability to wick moisture away from the skin, pulling it outward where it can evaporate, rather than trapping it against the body. This breathable first layer is the secret to staying dry from the inside out. Over this, they wear a second, looser layer of clothing, typically made of deerskin or elk hide, also tanned to a supple softness. This is the main insulating layer. It is worn loosely to create more airspace between it and the base layer, adding to the thermal barrier. These garments, leggings, a tunic, or a simple dress, are often decorated with intricate quill work or painted designs, a reminder that beauty and function are not separate things, but two sides of the same coin of a life well lived. The final, and most powerful, layer is the outer shell. For the deepest cold, nothing in the natural world can surpass the effectiveness of a prime winter buffalo robe. These are immense, heavy garments, taken from bulls in their prime, when their fur is a thick, shaggy, multi-layered coat. The hide itself is tanned to a surprising flexibility, but it is the fur that is the true marvel. A buffalo's winter coat is a complex structure of long, coarse guard hairs that shed snow and block the wind, and a dense, woolly underfur that provides a deep layer of insulation. Unlike the inner layer, the great buffalo robes are worn hair side in. This seems counterintuitive to the modern mind, which imagines a fur coat as having the fur facing out. But the wisdom here is profound. With the hair facing inward, The wearer is enveloped in a cocoon of soft, deep, insulating fur, creating a massive, stable pocket of warmed air around their entire body. The smooth, tough, tanned hide faces the elements, acting as a nearly impenetrable barrier against the wind. A person properly wrapped in a winter buffalo robe can sit directly in a driving snowstorm for hours and remain perfectly warm, their own body's heat captured and held by the magnificent engineering of the buffalo's coat. It is not just clothing, it is a portable shelter, a personal lodge that a person can carry on their back. This layered approach extends to their extremities, which are the most vulnerable to frostbite. Their moccasins are more than simple footwear. The outer shell is made of tough smoked moose hide, which remains flexible even in the most extreme cold. But the real secret is on the inside. Before putting on their moccasins, they stuff the bottom with a thick, springy cushion of dried grass or cattail down. This simple, natural material serves as a powerful insulator, protecting the soles of their feet from the cold that is constantly trying to leach up from the frozen ground. It also absorbs any moisture from sweat, and at the end of the day, this damp insulation can be easily removed, dried by the fire, and replaced the next morning, ensuring they always start the day with dry, warm footwear. Their hands are protected by mittens made from beaver fur, another animal master of cold weather adaptation. The beaver's pelt is famously dense and waterproof, and mittens, which keep the fingers together, are far warmer than gloves, which isolate each finger and allow heat to escape more rapidly. To protect their faces from the devastating effects of windburn and frostbite, they use a simple but effective balm. Wingyan keeps a small pouch containing a mixture of rendered animal fat, often bear grease, which is particularly resistant to freezing, and fine wood ash. This greasy, gray paste is smeared on any exposed skin, creating a barrier that protects the flesh from the searing, drying power of the wind. It is not an elegant solution, but it is a life-saving one. What underpins this entire system is the deep, unspoken understanding that the human body itself is the furnace. The clothing does not create warmth, it only preserves the heat that the body generates. This is why food, the fuel for that furnace, is so critically important. Every piece of pemmican, every morsel of dried meat, is a log on the fire within. The family, now settled and warm within their lodge, is a living demonstration of this principle. They are perfectly clothed, perfectly sheltered, their bodies and their home working in a beautiful, integrated harmony. They are a small island of tropical warmth, maintained by knowledge, materials, and a deep and abiding respect for the power of the cold. The lesson is clear. To survive the winter, one does not fight it, but rather wears it like a comfortable, well-made coat. With the lodge secured, the fire managed, and their bodies properly clothed, the family's focus shifts to the final pillar of their winter security, the larder. A shelter can keep you from freezing, but only food can provide the energy needed to generate the body heat that makes that shelter meaningful. A winter camp is not a place of scarcity, but one of careful, deliberate abundance, a wealth measured not in gold, but in calories and nutrients stored against the longest nights. Their provisions are not a random collection of supplies, but a thoughtfully curated system of preservation, a library of the summer's bounty translated into a form that can withstand the deepest freeze. The storm that is gathering outside could last for days, trapping them within their lodge. Their survival depends entirely on what they have had the foresight to prepare and the wisdom to store. Wingyan moves with quiet efficiency on her side of the lodge, the domestic heart of their small world. She kneels before the neatly stacked parfleche cases, their stiff, painted rawhide surfaces, a vibrant contrast to the muted tones of the teepee's interior. Each container holds a different treasure, a different form of captured sunlight and life. She opens the first, untying the leather thongs that hold it closed. The air is immediately filled with a rich, savory aroma, the smell of dried meat. This is jerky in its purest form, called bapa by the people. During the great buffalo hunts of the late autumn, the women worked for weeks, cutting the choicest, leanest cuts of meat into paper-thin sheets. These sheets were then hung on wooden racks in the open air, dried by the relentless prairie wind and the low autumn sun until all the moisture that could lead to spoilage was gone. The result is a strip of meat that is as light as wood and nearly as hard, but which contains all the concentrated protein of the original muscle. A single handful is enough to sustain a person for a day, and it can be eaten as is, chewed slowly until it softens in the mouth, or it can be broken into pieces and boiled with water to create a rich, life-sustaining soup. Beside the dried meat is another container, this one holding the precious pemmican, the dense mixture of pounded meat, rendered fat, and dried berries that forms the core of their emergency rations. The beauty of pemmican is not just its caloric density, but its completeness. The meat provides protein for muscle and strength, the fat provides the long-burning energy needed for warmth, and the berries provide essential vitamins that prevent the sicknesses that can plague a people in the long, sunless months of winter. It is a perfect, self-contained meal, a marvel of nutritional science discovered through generations of observation. Wingyan also has stores of other, more subtle flavors. In another case, there are dried berries, choke cherries, buffalo berries, and wild plums, harvested at the peak of their ripeness and dried on hides in the sun until they are like small, sweet jewels. She has braided ropes of wild onions and carefully stored the dried, edible roots of the prairie turnip, a starchy, nutrient-rich tuber that can be ground into flour or roasted in the coals of the fire. Every item in her larder represents a season, a place, a moment of plenty, now carefully preserved and brought into the heart of the winter scarcity. This is not just food, it is a tapestry of memory and foresight. Equally as important as food is water. While the world outside will soon be made of nothing but frozen water, accessing it safely requires knowledge. Chaitan takes the buffalo bladder, which is now a third full with meltwater from the snow, and places it in a shallow pit he has scraped in the earth right beside the fire. He now begins to add more handfuls of the fluffy, dry snow from the pile he brought inside. This is a crucial step. If one were to place a container of tightly packed snow directly over a fire, the snow at the very bottom would melt, but the rest of the snow, being a surprisingly good insulator, would prevent the heat from reaching the upper layers. The small amount of water at the bottom would quickly boil away, and the container, whether a clay pot or a hide bladder, would scorch and burn. By starting with a seed of liquid water, the process is transformed. Each handful of snow he adds is instantly melted by the existing water, which efficiently transfers the heat from the fire throughout the mixture. This slow, patient method allows him to melt a large quantity of snow into pure, clean drinking water without any risk to his container. It is a small but vital piece of wintercraft, a technique that turns a landscape of deadly cold into a source of life. He knows they will need a great deal of water, not just for drinking, but for the simple, warming soups and broths that will form the basis of their meals during the storm. Dehydration is a subtle and dangerous threat in the winter. The dry, cold air wicks moisture from the body with every breath, and it is easy to forget to drink when one does not feel the immediate thirst of a hot summer day. Maintaining a constant, accessible supply of water is a core tenet of their winter survival strategy. With the human larder secured, their attention turns briefly to their animal partners. Chaitan takes a small handful of dried cottonwood bark, which has a surprising amount of nutritional value, and mixes it with a few chunks of tallow. He will take this out to the ponies later, a small but energy-rich supplement to their meager winter foraging. The dogs, curled by the door, will receive scraps of meat and fat from the family's own meals. In this small, interdependent community, everyone is cared for, every life is valued. The children watch these preparations, absorbing the lessons without even realizing it. They see the care with which their mother handles the food, the respect she shows for every dried berry and every strip of meat. They see the patience with which their father melts the snow, the quiet, focused rhythm of his work. They are not being taught about logistics or resource management in an abstract way. They are learning that life is a circle of seasons, that the hard work of the summer and autumn is what brings comfort and safety in the winter. They are learning that to provide for one's family is the highest honor, and to be wasteful is to disrespect the gifts of the Creator and to endanger the lives of those you love. The winter larder is more than a pantry. It is a physical manifestation of a worldview, a testament to a life lived in a state of constant, grateful awareness of the intricate web that connects them to the land and to each other. With their food and water prepared, a sense of deep and abiding security settles over the family. The world outside can rage, the wind can howl, and the snow can bury the land. But within the warm, firelit circle of their lodge, they have everything they need. They have shelter, they have warmth, they have each other, and they have the stored bounty of the earth, a promise of life kept safe through the darkest days. With all the internal preparations complete, a final layer of security is established, one that extends beyond the individual and the lodge itself into the very layout and protocol of the camp. This is a system of communal safety, a quiet and orderly choreography designed to minimize risk and maximize awareness. It is built on the understanding that survival in this vast and unforgiving landscape is not just about tools and techniques, but about discipline, cooperation, and a constant, low-level state of vigilance. Even in the deepest peace, the potential for danger, a predator drawn by the scent of smoke, a sudden emergency in the middle of the night, is never entirely absent. The family's safety protocols are not written rules, but ingrained habits, a way of moving through the world that is as natural to them as breathing. The first line of this defense is not human. It is the two dogs, now resting but not truly asleep, near the entrance of the teepee. Their role as sentinels is paramount. They are not pets to be coddled, but working members of the camp with a critical job to do. Their senses are 1,000 times more acute than those of the people they guard. They can hear the stealthy footfall of a wolf on frozen ground long before any human ear could detect it. They can smell the approach of a bear or a mountain lion on the night air from a mile away. Their value lies not in their aggression, but in their alertness. A frantic barking dog is a liability, wasting energy and making noise that can attract unwanted attention. These dogs are trained, through generations of selective breeding and a lifetime of subtle cues from their human family, to be low energy, silent alarms. Their behavior is a language that the family reads fluently. A low, almost inaudible growl, a rumble deep in the chest, indicates a distant, non-threatening presence. The slight raising of an ear, the tensing of a muscle along the spine, a shift in breathing patterns. Each of these subtle signals conveys precise information about the world outside the thin hide walls. When the dogs are calm, curled into tight, sleeping balls, the family can rest in the certain knowledge that the immediate vicinity is safe. They are a living, breathing security system, one that runs on a few scraps of meat and a bond of mutual respect, and they are more reliable than any modern electronic alarm. This reliance on the dogs is part of a larger principle of order that governs the entire camp. Everything has its place, and everything is always returned to that place, without exception. Chaitan's bow and quiver of arrows are not leaned casually against a lodgepole. They are hung from a specific peg on his side of the lodge, always within arm's reach. Winyan's flint knife and bone awl are not left lying near the fire. They are returned to their designated pouch in her sewing kit the moment she is finished with them. This is not about mere tidiness. It is a critical safety protocol. In the middle of a dark, smoke-filled lodge during an emergency, one must be able to put a hand on a needed tool without a moment's hesitation, without searching. This unwavering sense of order extends to the children. From the time they can walk, they are taught this discipline. The boy knows that the small spear his father is teaching him to hunt rabbits with is not a toy. It has a specific place where it must be kept, and he is responsible for returning it there. Even the little girl knows that the carved wooden doll she plays with has its own small basket, and she must put it away before she sleeps. This creates a camp that runs with a quiet, predictable efficiency, a place where energy is never wasted on searching for misplaced items, and where a response to any situation can be immediate and effective. The circle is another fundamental concept in their safety. The camp itself is a circle. The tipi is a circle. The fire pit is a circle. The family sits in a circle. This is not just a matter of aesthetics. It is a practical and spiritual reality. A circle has no weak corners, no hidden spots. When sitting around the central fire, everyone can see everyone else. Everyone is equally close to the warmth. It fosters a sense of unity and shared awareness. If one person grows ill, if a child has a nightmare, it is noticed immediately. The circle creates a constant, passive state of mutual monitoring and support. It reinforces the knowledge that they are a single unit, their fates intertwined. The grandmother, Kimi, is the anchor of this circle. Her place at the back of the lodge, opposite the door, gives her a commanding view of the entire interior. From her seat, she can see the faces of her children and grandchildren. She can see the state of the fire. She can see the entrance. Her long life has given her an unparalleled ability to read the subtle cues of well-being. She can tell from the slight flush on a child's cheek if they are too warm, or from the shallow sound of a cough if someone is catching a chill. She is the quiet, ever-watchful heart of the family, her wisdom and experience a constant, reassuring presence that holds the circle together. The camp is now fully established, a perfect, stable island of warmth and life, floating in the vast, cold stillness of the valley. The external defenses are set, the internal systems are running smoothly, and the quiet, disciplined protocols of daily life are in full effect. A deep and satisfying peace settles over the family. The hard work of the journey and the setup is complete. The focused intensity of the storm preparations has subsided into a calm and watchful waiting. Chaitan rakes a few glowing coals from the main fire into the keyhole trench and places a small pot of water on to heat for a simple, warming broth. Wingyan adds a few broken pieces of dried meat and some wild onions to the pot, and soon a comforting, savory steam begins to fill the lodge. The children, now fully awake, listen as their grandmother begins to tell a story, a winter tale of the trickster, Iktomi, the spider. Her voice is low and rhythmic, a familiar and soothing sound that has been the soundtrack to their lives. Her story is not just entertainment. It is a lesson, a way of passing on the values and wisdom of their people in a form that a child can easily understand. It speaks of the importance of cleverness over brute force, of humility over pride. It is another layer of their preparation, a strengthening of the mind and the spirit to complement the strengthening of the lodge. And it is in this moment of perfect, peaceful equilibrium, with the warm broth simmering on the coals and the grandmother's voice weaving a gentle spell, that the world outside finally breaks its silence. It starts as a sound so low it is felt more than heard, a deep, resonant hum that seems to vibrate up from the frozen earth itself. The dogs, who had finally settled, instantly lift their heads, a low growl rumbling in their chests. The hum grows steadily, resolving itself into a soft, sighing moan. It is the first breath of the blizzard, the leading edge of the great storm making its presence known in the high branches of the cottonwoods. At the same time, the first few flakes of snow begin to fall. They are not the light, fluffy flakes of a gentle snow shower, but small, hard, granular crystals, like fine grains of sand. They make a faint, dry, hissing sound as they strike the taut buffalo hide of the tipi, a sound like 1,000 tiny whispers. The family falls silent. The grandmother's story pauses. Everyone looks up, toward the smoke hole, as if they could see the sky. The waiting is over. The test has begun. The island of warmth is about to be besieged by the full force of the winter sea. The arrival of the storm is not a sudden, crashing event, but a slow, inexorable escalation. The first faint hissing of ice crystals against the hide deepens, becomes a steady, rushing shush, the sound of a great dry river flowing over them. The low moan in the cottonwood swells in volume and drops in pitch, becoming a profound and constant groan, the voice of the wind finding its power. The teepee, which has stood in perfect silence, begins to respond. The smooth, taut hides start to hum with a low, resonant vibration, a physical expression of the immense energy being directed against them. The lodge poles, buried in their leather lashing at the apex, begin to creak and groan, the sound of wood fibers under immense and shifting pressures. It is not a sound of weakness, but one of resilience, the sound of a structure that is designed to flex and give, to absorb the force of the wind, rather than trying to stand in rigid opposition to it. Inside, the world shrinks. The faint connection to the stars through the smoke hole is gone, replaced by a swirling vortex of white. The fire, once burning so cleanly, now dances and flickers as the carefully tuned airflow at the top of the lodge is buffeted by the chaotic gusts. Chayton watches it with an eagle's focus, his hand resting on one of the teepee's interior poles, feeling the shudder of the wind as it strikes the north-facing side. He can feel the direction of the strongest gusts, the moments of lull, reading the storm's rhythm through the body of the lodge itself. The first day is a blur of white noise and vigilance. The family moves in a slow, dreamlike rhythm, their world defined by the 15-foot circle of their home. The concept of day and night becomes meaningless. Outside, the world has vanished, erased by a blinding, suffocating curtain of blowing snow. There is no horizon, no sky, no ground, only the raging, homogeneous white. Time is measured now only by the needs of the fire. Every hour, Chayton adds another piece of the slow-burning cottonwood root to the bed of coals, maintaining the heart of their warmth. Every few hours, he must brace himself, pull on his heavy outer robe, and step outside into the screaming chaos to adjust the smoke flaps. He is never out for more than a minute. The wind rips the breath from his lungs, and the fine, hard snow, driven with the force of sandblasting, stings any exposed skin. Each time he comes back inside, coated in a fine layer of white powder that instantly melts in the warm air, the family is given a brief, shocking reminder of the fury they are sheltered from. The sound alone is terrifying. It is no longer a moan, but a constant, deafening roar, a sound of immense and mindless power that seems to want to tear the world apart. Yet inside the lodge, a strange and profound peace reigns. The children, frightened at first by the noise, have been soothed by their mother's calm demeanor and their grandmother's steady presence. They play quiet games with smooth stones and leather dolls, their young minds adapting with incredible speed to their new reality. Wing-Yen prepares simple, warming meals of broth and boiled meat, the familiar ritual a comforting anchor in the storm. The family eats, they sleep, they listen. The lodge becomes their entire universe, a warm, living ark adrift on a sea of white fury. By what they judge to be the morning of the second day, the character of the storm begins to change. The wind, which had been a constant, horizontal force, now seems to be coming from all directions at once. The gusts and eddies swirling around the cottonwood grove. The temperature, which was already brutally cold, plunges even further. A new and deeper cold settles over the land, a cold so intense it feels like a physical weight, a presence that actively seeks to invade their shelter, to steal their precious warmth. This is the heart of the blizzard. The family feels the change instantly. The air at the very edges of the lodge, near the ground where the teepee cover meets the snow, grows noticeably colder. A faint, persistent draft, which the liner had previously defeated, begins to find its way in, a cold finger tracing the circumference of their living space. The fire itself seems to struggle, the flames burning lower, as if the cold outside is so powerful it is sucking the very heat up the smoke hole. Kimi, the grandmother, who has been resting under her robes, begins to cough. It is not a deep, productive cough, but a shallow, dry, raspy sound in the relative quiet of the lodge. It is a small sound, but it carries an immense weight of worry. An old person's lungs are vulnerable, and a sickness that would be a minor inconvenience in the summer can be a death sentence in the heart of a winter storm. Wing-Yen immediately goes to her mother-in-law's side, feeling her forehead, offering her a warm drink of melted snow and crushed mint leaves. The grandmother waves her away with a weak smile, but the family has been put on notice. Their moment of stable, comfortable equilibrium has passed. The test has deepened. Chaitan looks at the woodpile, and for the first time, a flicker of true concern crosses his face. The stack of firewood, which had seemed so large and generous 2 days ago, has dwindled at a rate he had not anticipated. In their constant battle to keep the lodge warm against the deepening cold, they have been feeding the fire more than he had planned. He does a quick mental calculation. At this rate of consumption, their fuel will not last another full day, and the storm outside shows no signs of abating. Panic is not in his nature, but a cold, hard knot of reality forms in his stomach. To run out of wood in these conditions would be unthinkable. The fire is not a luxury. It is the engine of their survival. Without it, the lodge would become a frozen tomb within hours. He looks at his wife, at his sleeping children, at his coughing mother, and the full weight of his responsibility settles upon him. The knowledge and preparations that have served them so well until this point are no longer sufficient. The storm has found a way to push them to a new and more dangerous edge. The peak of their stability is over. The systems they so carefully built are now under a strain they were not designed for. The easy rhythm of survival has been broken. Now, every piece of wood, every calorie of food, every degree of warmth has become precious beyond measure. A deeper, older, and more subtle wisdom is now required. A wisdom that goes beyond simply building a bigger fire. They must find a way to do more with less, to fight the greatest cold they have ever known with dwindling resources. The blizzard, it seems, has one final, brutal lesson to teach them. The realization of their dwindling fuel supply does not trigger a dramatic, spoken crisis. There are no frantic discussions, no panicked recriminations. The family's response is as quiet and profound as the deep cold they are fighting. A shared, unspoken understanding flows between them, a collective shift in strategy born from a reservoir of knowledge far deeper than standard emergency procedure. This is the moment when the true genius of their way of life reveals itself, not in grand, heroic gestures, but in a series of small, precise, and almost invisible acts of warmth. These are the choices born of generations of living through such moments, a subtle and powerful wisdom that prioritizes efficiency over brute force and communal care over individual comfort. The instinct of a modern person, faced with a failing furnace, might be to find more fuel, to risk a dangerous trip outside to chop more wood. Chaitan does not even consider this. He knows that in the blinding, disorienting fury of the blizzard, to leave the immediate vicinity of the lodge would be suicide. The energy he would expend would be far greater than any he could hope to gain from the frozen, snow-buried wood he might find. Instead, he turns his attention back to the fire, but his goal is no longer to make it hotter, but to make it smarter. He does not add another log. Instead, with a long, fire-hardened stick, he begins to rearrange the existing bed of coals. He gently pushes all the glowing embers from the wide, circular part of the fire pit into a single, tightly packed mound. He is consolidating the heart of the fire, reducing its surface area, turning it from a wide radiator into a focused, intensely hot core. He then carefully banks this mound with the thick, gray ash that has accumulated at the edges of the pit, creating an insulating layer that will trap the heat and cause the coals to burn far more slowly, preserving their energy for hours to come. The lodge will grow cooler, but the fire will last. He is trading a comfortable present for a secure future. Wing-Yen, seeing her husband's actions, immediately understands her role in this new phase of conservation. Her attention turns to the portable heat sources they have been cultivating since the storm began, the smooth river stones. Using 2 sturdy sticks as tongs, she carefully pulls one of the stones from the edge of the now banked fire. It glows with a dull, internal red, a captured piece of the fire's heart. She places it on a piece of flat bark to cool for a moment, testing its heat with a quick, practiced touch. When it is no longer hot enough to scorch, but still radiating a powerful, penetrating warmth, she wraps it in a piece of soft, thick deerskin. She moves to where her mother-in-law is resting, her breathing still shallow and raspy. With a gentle touch, she lifts the edge of Kimmy's heavy buffalo robe and tucks the warm, leather-wrapped stone near her feet. A small, personal furnace that will deliver targeted heat directly to her chilled body. She then reheats another stone and does the same for her 2 sleeping children, placing the warm bundle in the space between their small bodies, a shared source of comfort and life. This is a profound act of energy triage. Instead of trying to heat the entire volume of air in the lodge, which is an inefficient and fuel-intensive battle, she is applying the heat exactly where it is needed most, protecting the most vulnerable members of the family, ensuring their core temperatures remain stable. The principle of conservation now extends to their own bodies. The family huddles closer together, abandoning their individual sleeping spots around the perimeter of the lodge to create a single, shared nest in the place of honor at the back. They pull the thickest, warmest buffalo robes, which had been used as individual blankets, and layer them over the entire family, creating a collective cocoon. The air trapped between their bodies and beneath the heavy robes becomes a shared reservoir of warmth, each person's body heat contributing to the well-being of the others. This simple act of huddling reduces the amount of body heat each individual loses to the surrounding air by a significant amount. They become a single, multi-bodied organism, united in their fight against the cold. It is an instinct as old as life itself, and in this moment, it is the most advanced technology they possess. To conserve their own energy, they slow down. All non-essential movement ceases. Kimi, who understands this better than anyone, closes her eyes and allows her body to fall into a state of deep, quiet rest, her breathing slow and even. Wingen and the children, now awake, remain still, tucked close together. Chaitin, his work at the fire complete, joins them, settling into the nest, adding his own body heat to the collective. They are no longer talking, they are simply being, their bodies focused on the single, essential task of generating and preserving warmth. Chaitin, however, remains ever vigilant. His senses are still attuned to the lodge and the storm. He notices a subtle but persistent shift in the sound of the wind, and a corresponding flutter in the behavior of the smoke rising from their now tiny fire. He knows a minor adjustment to the smoke flaps is needed, a change that could make a significant difference in their battle against the cold. He quietly slips out of the shared bed and prepares to go outside. But this time, Wingen stops him with a hand on his arm. She takes the final piece of the precious pemmican, the family's richest and most calorie-dense food, a piece they had been saving. It is a block of pure sweet fat, the rendered suet from around the buffalo's kidneys, mixed with a little berry powder. It is not a meal, but a shot of pure energy, a fuel designed for the most extreme situations. She breaks it into 4 pieces and gives a portion to each member of the family, saving the largest for her husband. They chew the rich, fatty substance slowly, feeling its warmth spread through them almost immediately. She is ensuring that Chaitin has the internal fuel he needs to face the storm, even for a moment. This small act of sharing the last of their richest food is a sacrament, a powerful affirmation of their interdependence. Fortified, Chaitin steps outside into the howling darkness. He is gone for less than a minute. He moves the 2 control poles by no more than a hand's breadth, a tiny, almost imperceptible adjustment to the angle of the flaps. But it is enough. When he returns, the family can see the result. The smoke from the banked fire, which had been hesitating, now draws cleanly up the flue once more. The insidious, cold draft that had been seeping into the lodge is diminished, the delicate balance of pressure restored. These are not the grand, dramatic gestures of a desperate struggle. They are the small, quiet, and infinitely wise acts of a people who do not see themselves as being at war with winter, but in a difficult and dangerous negotiation with it. They are conserving, consolidating, and concentrating their resources, both internal and external. They have pulled their circle of warmth tighter, shrinking their world down to the essentials, the glowing heart of the embers, the warmth of their own bodies, and the unbreakable strength of their bond with each other. In doing so, They have found a way to endure the storm's deepest rage, not by adding more power, but by embracing a more profound quiet. After an immeasurable passage of time, huddled together in the deep, shared quiet of their nest, a change begins to register. It is not a sudden event, but a slow, gradual release of pressure, a subtle unwinding of the world's tension. The first to notice it is Chaitan. He has been lying awake, his body still but his senses extended, listening not just to the storm, but through it, searching for any alteration in its character. The deafening, soul-shaking roar that has been the soundtrack to their lives for 2 days and 2 nights begins to lose its sharp, violent edge. The high, shrieking tones of the wind scouring the plains fade first, leaving behind a deeper, more resonant bass note. The violent, chaotic gusts that had shaken the lodgepoles with unpredictable fury begin to fall into a more regular, rhythmic pattern. The great, angry voice of the blizzard is slowly, grudgingly, falling silent. He does not move. He does not speak. He continues to listen, allowing the evidence to accumulate, cautious of a false lull, a brief pause in the storm's assault. But the trend continues. The constant, percussive shuddering of the teepee's frame subsides into a gentle, rhythmic swaying. The frantic, hissing sound of ice crystals striking the hide softens into a gentler, more muffled patter. It is the sound of snow now, not ice, softer, heavier flakes beginning to fall. One of the dogs, which has been pressed tightly against the door flap, lets out a long, quiet sigh, and for the first time in hours, relaxes its posture, laying its head down on its paws. The family, sensing the change in the atmosphere and in Chaitan's focused stillness, begins to stir. Kimi's coughing has subsided. Her breathing in the deep quiet has become slow and regular. The children remain asleep, their faces peaceful in the dim, reddish glow from the banked embers of the fire. Chaitan waits for another hour, an hour in which the great roaring of the wind finally dies away completely, replaced by an immense, profound, and ringing silence. It is a silence that feels deeper and more complete than any they have known before, the kind of absolute stillness that follows a great and prolonged violence. He gently slips out from under the heavy buffalo robes, his movements slow and careful so as not to disturb the others. He moves to the center of the lodge and adds a few small twigs to the glowing coals. They catch immediately, and a small, bright, cheerful flame springs to life, pushing back the deep shadows, illuminating the interior of their small, resilient world. He looks around him. The lodge is intact. The liner is still in place. Their belongings are secure. His family is safe, their breath rising and falling in the peaceful rhythm of sleep. A feeling of profound and overwhelming gratitude washes over him, a quiet, internal prayer of thanks for the strength of the lodge, for the wisdom of his ancestors that guided his hands, for the warmth of the fire, and for the unwavering resilience of his family. He moves to the east-facing door, his heart beating a little faster with anticipation of what he will see. He slowly, carefully, unfastens the wooden pins that have held the door shut against the storm's fury. He pulls back the heavy hide flap, and the new world is revealed. It is a world reborn, cleansed and purified by the storm. The light that floods into the lodge is not the harsh, direct light of the sun, but a soft, deep, ethereal blue. It is the color of the world in the moments just before dawn, a light filtered through a sky scrubbed clean and reflected off an endless expanse of new snow. The air that flows in is not the raging, violent wind of the blizzard, but a gentle, calm current, so cold it feels like a physical touch, but so pure and clean it seems to wash away the stale, smoky air of their long confinement. The world is utterly, breathtakingly silent and still. Chaitan steps outside, his moccasins making the first tracks in the new landscape. The snow is deeper than he is tall, but in the immediate lee of the cottonwood grove, it has been sculpted by the wind into graceful, flowing drifts. Their teepee, which had stood starkly against the frozen ground, is now nestled in a deep, insulating blanket of white, the the snow piled up around its base almost to the height of the doorway. This bank of snow, a gift from the very storm they feared, has provided an extra, perfect layer of insulation, sealing every tiny gap and draft, turning their shelter into an even more effective fortress of warmth. He looks up. The sky is a vast, clear, dark dome, transitioning from the black of night to the deep indigo of pre-dawn. The last of the winter stars blaze with an unmatched brilliance. Straight above him, a thin, perfect, unwavering column of smoke rises from the smoke hole of the lodge, a single, straight line connecting their small circle of life to the heavens. It is the ultimate sign of success, the visual proof that the delicate balance of their living machine has been maintained through the worst the world could throw at it. He walks a few paces into the pristine snow, the soft crunch of his footsteps, the only sound in the universe. He looks back at their home. The pale, smoke-tanned hide of the tipi glows from within, a warm, golden cone in the deep blue twilight. It looks small and fragile against the immense, white landscape, yet he knows it is one of the strongest things on earth. Its strength derived not from rigidity, but from wisdom, from its perfect harmony with the forces of nature. He sees the tracks of one of the dogs, a neat line of prints, heading toward the river, the animal already about its business in the new day. He sees the ponies, safe and sound, shaking the thick layer of snow from their backs, their survival a testament to the wisdom of Kimmy's choice of this sheltered place. He looks to the eastern horizon, and there, a thin, incandescent line of pale gold is just beginning to appear. The promise of the rising Sunday. The storm is over. They have endured. They have prevailed. But the feeling is not one of triumphant victory, not the feeling of having conquered an enemy. It is a feeling of deep and humble gratitude. Gratitude for their knowledge, for their preparedness, but most of all, for the enduring strength that comes from family, from community, from living in a state of constant respect for the immense and often terrifying beauty of the world they are a part of. The lesson of the storm is clear. Survival was not a battle, but a dance. A long, difficult, and dangerous dance, but a dance nonetheless. A dance of respect, resilience, and profound, quiet knowledge with the great and awesome power of winter.